All right. But they do have these nice labels and milestones and stuff, which is cool. So labels. We're going to start by just putting points. So we're going to do 1 point. Yo.
There we go. How's it going?
Good. Just doing dev stuff. We just talked about Scrum, about what syllabi it is. We're going to start actually working as a dev team. So this is like planning. So we're going to create our issues and then assign them out. And then 3 points, 2 points, 3 points. 2 points. So
they don't say what color they are.
Yeah, they also say the point, right? So. And we're just trying to give some indication of if these things are getting worse. That's our general point structure. We're going to throw the way that we used to throw here, which is Scrum, the way that they tell you to throw, is just throw based on complexity. And you'll just figure that out as a team. And it kind of works. It's a little weird. And in the end, you all end up like with some sort of frame of reference. We're going to do it as if it's going to take less than a day to complete it, it's a point. If it takes less than 2 days, it's 2 points. Less than 3 days, 3 points. Less than, etc. You do the skipping because as you get further and further away, it's harder to estimate. And so you have to make a choice between whether it's the lower or the higher to try and give you a point of reference. Okay. So the labels. Post task, I guess. All right. So let's just go to stencil. All right. So what would be an example of a thing that we need to do for syllabi? Course feed. Okay. I'm just going to try and pull up the...
How granular do you get with these?
You want to make things in some sort of a reasonable work unit, which is to say, like, when I finish it, I have something, right? It can't be like I'm going to add a link. Like, that's just not very useful. But you also want to keep them, in terms of relative complexity, small enough that they can be accomplished. Generally, you want to stay under that 3-day deadline, right? So the smaller the work unit is, the more predictable it is in terms of how long it'll take to accomplish it. But we want it to be big enough that it's a something, that it actually accomplishes something.
So how does architecture go down in terms of like thinking about how this is, or is that just a discussion in terms of like this is how these things will be connected?
You mean how the code actually works? So right now, what we're doing is very high level product stuff.
No, okay.
And then what happens, and that's how the stories are written, and that's how they should be written, which is we're writing this as though somebody who knows nothing about coding, when they look at the product, they know whether this feature was accomplished or not. You see what I'm saying? And then how it actually gets accomplished, you can write notes if there's a reason to write it, like while we're going through here. Like make sure that you look at this other code that exists in somewhere else that does a thing like that. But most of that conversation happens during design. So this is what is the product that we're trying to build, and then as developers, we try and figure out what the code is going to look like architecturally. Does that make sense? So what I wanted was where did I send you guys the syllabi stuff?
You shared. Evan shared it with us.
Oh,
On
right.
screens.
And really, the reason I'm doing this is that we can drop these images into the issues so that you have a reference for how to get there. So, yeah, so you were talking about the course feed. Something like this. And then we want some description about what this is actually going to do.
So from like maybe this is too weird of a question, but like from civics, I just wanted to know like how, like for example, one of the ways like I had designed that screen.
Mhm.
This is just for an example, just so I could see how this would be done in this type of context.
Yep.
So I had the screen so that it displays that, but like the assignments, it just gives the number, and then when you go to the assignments page, it gets loaded there.
Mm-hmm.
So how would that be done in like a Scrum perspective, where one person is creating this page,
Mm-hmm.
then the other person is creating the other page? Do you say, okay, like from the top level, I'm making this page, you're making that page, and then when we get to the design, I'm saying I'm like, and also this is in the context where I'm not using routing. Like if we're making an app and we just decide we're not using routing
Yep.
and all that. So would I be saying, okay, I'm making this page, I'm not actually going to load the assignments for the courses, but you have to make sure you're ready to do that when you go to load the page?
Yep.
Is that like, those are like behind the scenes conversations?
Yep. So some of that'll happen in design itself when you'll like remind each other of that. Some of that'll happen just in like pair programming because you two are more dependent on each other's code in that case, and so you'll have to have a conversation about how do I get it from here to here. Some of it is design though. Like one way to easily solve that, and this is sometimes we make these decisions just because they make our workflow easier. So one of the reasons to have routing is that you can say, yeah, I'm going to have a route called assignments. All you have to do is make your link go to assignments. Don't worry that there's nothing there. He's going to build the page for the route of assignments, right? And then it'll just show up. And so when he merges his stuff in and he merges your stuff in, you'll have it. And so, but if you do it as a single page app, that becomes much more complicated because then you have to have a conversation about what are we using for our state store to be able to have like a route. How do I know when I'm going from here to there? Do I need to know what your component is going to be named? And since your component doesn't exist yet, I'm going to get all kinds of errors if I try to put it there. So you're going to have to finish yours before you can do. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's some of those conversations are of that type, which is how do we make this so we can work together as easily as possible? Sometimes this doesn't make sense to split that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if they're different stories, you might just have to take both of them because if you were to give it to somebody else, they'd have to wait for you to be done before they could do it anyway. So you could say, whatever, that's just something we'll assign out next week, and then somebody else could take it potentially, or you'd have to take it and get it done yourself because nobody else can do it until you're done. That makes sense? One thing to think about too as we go through this process, you really want to deliver each story as soon as possible. So one of the things that's going to happen, because we're going to have a lot of stories, is you're going to get assigned multiple stories for the week, and you're going to be tempted to complete all of your stories before you merge your pull request in. That's bad for several reasons. One is you've now done a very large chunk of code that nobody's going to want to read the pull request for because it's just too long and it's tedious and it's annoying, and I don't know which parts are related to story A and which are related to story B. The other thing is the more code that you write, the more opportunity there is for merge conflicts, which means that you're going to have to spend more time trying to fix things with other people. Whereas if you get into production, they can do a little work and you can do a little work, and it balances out a little bit better. And then the other reason is if you spend that much time on something, it generally carries over because you're trying to, like, every time you make a fix to one thing, you're broken something else, and so you keep going back and forth, and it'll carry over into the next week, and you can just get stuck in a pattern where you've just got too big of a project and you're there for a month. That happens sometimes. You don't want to get there. So you want to try to deliver each story one at a time. Deliver the story, move on to the next one. Even where you see, like, I want to do these things all together. All right, so if we're talking about the course feed, what are some of the specifications that we need for the course feed? And we can just stick to, like, this page, essentially.
You need the add course button.
So you need the add course button to be there. Do that. But here's the thing. So, and this is something that's, I think, the easiest way to think about writing stories and how you're going to create your product is to start from the beginning of the app, which is to say, I can't really have a course feed until what?
Courses.
I have courses, and how do I get courses?
A course button.
Yeah, well, with a
An
course
add button.
with an add course button, and then the add course button creates the courses, right? I need a way of creating courses before I can really have a course feed. Does that make sense?
But I thought we were just talking about what the course feed is going to look like.
Yeah. So my point. Yeah, you're right. So my point here is that maybe this isn't the right story to start with. Okay, because we're starting like a step in, right? And so you're saying put the add course button here, and that doesn't actually make that much sense. What we really should have is a course creation, ability to create courses, and that will include a course create button and probably the empty screen when there's nothing. And then when we create the course feed, you'll put the second button in there that'll call the same functionality that the create course is already doing. Right. So
Are we gonna do also, because following that point, we want to do in terms of the user cycling through the app.
Yeah.
You'd want to start with the login.
Right. So normally you
But are we not doing that in this first version?
Right, exactly. Yep. So if we were saying that the MVP included the login, that's where you normally start with the app creation. Is I want to be able to log in because until I can log in, I can't access anything else. And so, but for our case, login's a little bit more complicated, and that's something I want you guys to do in a couple of weeks. And so we're going to start with the simpler piece, which is a non-authenticated app. Okay. So, and we're going to see there's problems with that, right? So because we're not starting with a login, even though that we know that we want the login, there's going to be things that happen that you can't do yet that you will want to do once you can authenticate, including how the initial routing works is going to be a pain to figure out now. And the other thing is you're in many cases going to want to audit who created the course, and you don't have any way of doing that yet because you don't have an authenticated user. So there are things that you're going to have to go backwards for once you authenticate. But if we started there, if we start with a normal app flow of I open the app, there's a login screen, I go through the login screen, then you would already have those things and you could do it while you're building. But that's the other reason to start with. You really want to do things based on app flow. So how would I as a user actually interact with these things? And let's do them in that order so that I have all of the real data available to me as I build the next step. Okay.
I have a question about
Yep.
the end product.
Yep.
So, people aren't going to be able to, like, put in a syllabus without a course, right? Like, they won't be able to put in a syllabus so that the app finds that
Right.
course and creates a course. You have to create the course first.
Yes. Yes. We could talk about how we might get around that, but you probably don't want to. So, like, we were to go with the MTurk way, for example. If it was based on I just uploaded the course and then eventually my course is going to show up, it's hard for the user to know like anything's happening. So we need some like pending syllabus state for them. We also probably would want that for people who like, because while we're waiting the hour for our syllabus to be verified and to create the course, somebody else might go in and create that course manually without a syllabus, and so then you have to reconcile those two things, and how do you do that, and what does that look like? So if you just start with, I think the simpler UX is just you manually create the course and then you upload a syllabus to it. But those are definitely things you could think about, like how to, is there a better way to do that? So let's do the ability to create a course, which really I think there's like an empty state, isn't there?
Yeah. It's
This one? It's this one, right?
Oh yeah. Well, that's the button 3.1.
Oh, here, yeah. So we can do. So you could do this in a couple of different ways. You could just do. I'm going to do these two pieces, and then I it on the back end, or you could do all three of these, which is it creates on the back end and actually shows up here. How would
I'm confused about this.
so I could do 3.1.1 and 3.1.2, and then it actually persists on the back end, right? Or I could do 3.1.1, 3.1.2, and 3.1.3, where it actually shows up on the front end. See what I'm saying? And it persists on the back end, which is how it's showing up in the front. And there's several different, like, there have been times in this organization where we will have just built the front end screens and just make it show up and not persist it because we're trying to do a demo and we just want the prototype to be out there and we can show it. Sometimes we do it because we're not sure if it's the right screens, and so we want to not have to do the back end work if that's not how it's going to end up. We want to be able to put it in front of people and see.
Yeah, so in this case, I guess I get what you're saying in terms of demoing it, but based on how we're designing it with the router, would it just not make sense to do 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3? Because 3.3 will all, in the end, it has to get it from the back end, so designing it differently to start with is weird because then you're going to have to redesign it.
Yeah, so you run into some problems here. And so like normally we have these things, we don't spend so much time on how should we do this. We just do it, right?
Yeah.
We're doing this for your edification, etc. But what you would normally do, what you would identify pretty quickly with a story like this is you might as well do all three of them together. And there's a few reasons for that. The biggest one is probably if somebody is doing the create course and you try to split out this piece, you have to have a very specific conversation about what the API is going to look like, what the data is going to look like, right? Because if I'm the person doing the create and I name the fields course underscore name, course underscore number, section underscore number, term, and instructor, and you're over here and you expect that's dumb that you have a model named course and then a field named course underscore name. So you assume I'm going to do course.name. And that's what you're going to get back here, you're going to be wrong. And it's not going to work when the API actually gets set up. It's also the case that like the endpoint even that you're trying to hit to pull these down, because it doesn't exist yet, you're going to have to guess what the endpoint is. Because he could have named it courses, which is probably what you should name it, but he could have named it student courses or something. And so then when you go to connect it, you're like, shit, I spent all this time working on this thing and nothing works. And now I have to talk to you about how to make it work. Whereas if it's the same person doing all of it, it's obvious. Or the alternative is if somebody does this piece and it exists, then you can hand out this piece. But you wouldn't be able to hand them out at the same time in parallel. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The other reason to do all of these together is that then you have a fully functional feature. Right? Before that, you don't really have very much. Now, what you're going to be missing is the syllabus button won't work and the assignment button won't work. So potentially you leave those two out of the design and we build them in later, or you put the links there and you just assume somebody else is going to take care of whatever the other pieces are. And those are more reasonable things because they're just links. So you potentially give this whole thing to somebody and then the syllabus uploader to somebody else and the assignment creation flow to somebody else.
And another thing, maybe we're going too specific into like these type of questions.
No, it's good.
But so a lot of these screens, like for example, when you get to the assignment screen,
Mhm.
Which is like the third tab on the bottom. That person will just be using information like a lot of these screens like who's doing the back end, because a lot of these screens are using that same model but they're
Mhm.
just displaying the information differently.
Yeah.
So who's actually making the back end that everybody's gonna be like, all right, that's the master. Like everybody, like how is that? Is that just whoever started first?
Yeah.
Like, how is that?
Yeah, generally it's whoever started it first. There's some considerations. Sometimes there's, like, if you have more advanced op stuff happening and you need the product to be in a very specific way, and there's somebody on the team who happens to know how to set it up that way, you might let them create the initial app and then you build from there. But most of the time, the way our team works is you're full stack. So you know how to do DevOps, you know how to do front end, you know how to do back end, you know how to do database, all the stuff, right? And so whoever starts it first does it. The value of that is you understand all the way across the entire product how things are working and where they're going, and that means you can help to inform conversations and decisions moving forward. It doesn't work so well when you get to larger teams because you just can't. I mean, you can't know everything about every system for every product when you're working in a Facebook. You're just not going to know everything. You're going to have to let some things go. And so generally what happens there is you need to have an understanding of the API that's being exposed by another team, and you need to understand the stuff that's going on your team, but you maybe are just a front-end person or just a back-end person or just a database person.
So under this case, basically, they're basically two people who make the courses area and then the assignments area, and anyone else working on it will basically be mostly the front end. Because they're just getting, because there's nothing else to build in the back end, and they're getting from the assignments.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And that happens a lot. So the person who's doing the create courses flow and the person who does the create assignments flow, they are probably building the back ends. One of you will create the initial Rails app, and the other person will pull it down and run some migrations against it. But yeah, that's sort of how it works. All right, so ability to create courses. So you actually want to persist courses. You want to display a large button. So most of this it should be useful for both the developer and for anybody who's trying to determine whether the feature has been completed successfully. So ideally that you're having some check marks here to give you, like, they actually did this, right? They did this. And then somebody can come through and mark off that that actually happened. In our case, like, you're going to be the person deciding, or somebody else on your team is going to be the person deciding that this actually happened. The one piece of information that's technical here is the RGBA, which is just saying when you create the colors, I want you to use RGBA and not hex, and that's just because we might want to give some level of opacity or transparency to it, and this will allow us to do that. So, like, in the future, we might want to make it so that you can kind of see through the little line or whatever, and that allows you to do it, which hex would not.
So what is
RGBA is like hex. It's just a different way of defining colors. So hex is it goes from 000 to FFF, 6 of them, but RGBA works in a similar way, except it's 3 codes, so red, green, and blue, and it goes from 0, which is black, to 255, which is whatever color it is. And so you can go 0 green, 0 blue, 0 red, 0 green, 0 blue, which is black, or you can go 255 red, 255 green, 255 blue, which is white. So it's all the colors. but there's a fourth variable that you do. It's a number between 0 and 1, and that's the transparency. That's the extent to which you want it to bleed through the background that it's sitting on top of. Does that make sense? And there's lots of converters that go from hex to RGBA and backwards. What's going on? Oh, the TV turned off. Evan.
Oh.
Yeah, one job. Evan.
I was done.
All right. All right, so once the thing has actually been created, it looks like this.
Wow.
And you can write additional comments in here. The thing that's really cool is that in your commit message, you can say delivers #1 or fixes #1, and then it'll mark this issue as closed automatically, and it'll associate that commit that you made, so you'll be able to quickly look and see, oh, this code is what solved that particular issue. So it does some really nice things. So you do want to do that. You never want to close an issue with this. You want to close the issue by saying delivers or closes or fixes the thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So are you saying all of those keywords close the issue?
Any of those will close it. Yep. It's generally you use fixes if it's a bug, or closes or delivers if it's a story. Okay. So right now you don't have any bugs because you don't have any product. So you guys are doing great.
That just goes in your.
That's right, Tony.
That just goes in your commit message.
What's that? Yep, it just goes in your commit message. It would just be it commit closes.
What goes in the message?
Yeah.
We don't have to come up with commit messages.
Well, yeah, no, that's right. Because that declares what the commit, what you're doing in that commit. Right, I'm closing this thing. I'm done with it. Now, generally, what you want to do.
Could you add like more text to that?
Oh yeah, you can put you can put whatever. Yeah. The generally you're doing this on a branch, so you want to create a branch, and then once you have a branch, you're going to have a merge request, and then in your merge request. Because we don't have any actual real data. So work in progress that does that automatically. That's just saying I'm still working on this, so I don't want you to try to merge it yet. I'm just creating the merge request so it's ready to go. You're going to be working on a branch, so that was a branch that already exists called navfix. You're pushing your things to navfix. You're not actually pushing to and from master anymore. And then what you're going to do is when you're ready, when it's done, you're going to say, okay, this is no longer work in progress. I actually want to merge this thing. You do your commit messages, and then eventually you're going to want to squash commits, it's called. What that does is while you're working on your branch, you're going to make several commits to that branch, right? Like you're going to finish at the end of the day and do a commit. Ideally, you're committing like every time you make any change so you don't lose data, right? It's getting committed and pushed. But in the end, what I want to merge is not every one of those commits and all the changes that I've made all the way through. I just want to commit the final product. I'm saying like this thing is done, so I just want to take what the final thing is and I want to merge that as though it's a single commit. That's what a squash does.
But you're accepting to lose the closes things.
You still get closes because all the commit messages come together. It takes all the commit messages across all the things and puts them all together, and then the closes will still go. Okay. But you can have lots of other commits in there, and it'll go as one thing instead of 15 things. And that's just easier for history. So when you're looking back, I don't really care if you made 30 different commits to this one feature. I just want to know what was the code that made this feature work.
So it's basically net progress.
Yeah. Does that make sense? So you always want to click on those things. All right. So that's how that works. We'll go create a branch in a minute. Get everybody set up. The other thing with branches is you generally want to put your name in front of them, unless you're working with somebody else, and that's just a quick reference for people to know who it is. So you would be like Justin Dash, Ashland Dash, whatever. All right, so let's go back. Create a couple more issues. Right. Duplicate this. I'm just going to copy all this because we're doing a very similar thing. Right, ability to create assignments. Just assignments with no assignments. Right, very similar. The screenshot's going to be different. Let me get that workflow. Is there an assignments flow like that somewhere?
Yes.
6.1.
Yeah. Somebody can create this thing. And color picker. All right, so the issue that we've run into now, though, is that's basically all of the work from last week, but we only have 2 stories. We have 4 people. There's a couple of ways that you can approach this. One way is through something that's called swarming. Swarming is where you work together on each issue. Like you would bring 2 people together and you would pair program through the whole thing, which can be useful, particularly when things are complex or when we're like working through a new set of technologies. We might try that at some point in the future, but for now we're gonna try and find other things to do. So what we need to start thinking about now is what's the other work against syllabi that we could do that somebody wants to start to tackle so we can write those stories and get started with it. So if we look, we can start if we want by looking at some of the screens that exist for things that we haven't built, or if you guys have ideas about things that might be interesting to do in syllabi that don't exist, you can do that. I see 2 stories that are obvious from these screens, but if you guys have other ideas, I'm more than happy to let you try to work on those.
Anyone have any thoughts?
Obviously, logging in.
Yeah.
And like authentication,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking a picture of your syllabus.
So yeah, logging in, and then we're gonna keep it simple. It actually will just work on the phone if you use a normal like upload button in the HTML. It'll give you the option to use your camera or to upload something. So we're just gonna start with that.
Is
Wait.
that what you were thinking, or were you thinking something?
Those are the 2 that I was thinking of. Yeah, upload the syllabus and the authentication flow.
Okay.
Well, isn't there also like, if you click the like assignments tab on the bottom, it'll show all of the assignments for all of the courses.
Oh right, yeah. So
That's the one we were doing.
well,
Wasn't
one
that-
is for just that course.
Yeah.
I think that's the one.
No, it has the picture of the whole.
Like isn't I
Oh,
think
you're
that's
right.
just for one course.
Is just for one course, but you can show all of your assignments like stacked. So yeah, that's another one. The problem with that one, Ashlyn, was what would the problem be if we tried to assign that one out?
I guess you have to do that after.
You have to wait. So like we probably want to do that next week as a result of. But yeah. Does that make sense? All right. So we, I can certainly make the other 2 issues. Let's just do.
Yeah, and just write like an algorithm that understands how to interpret a picture of a syllabus. Perfect. It's like a 5.
Yeah. No big deal. Yeah, you notice I'm leaving the really hard stuff off of it. Let me create an account.
So is there any, like, who decides if an assignment is correct? The students in this case? Like if it's been entered correctly.
So for the moment, it's just whoever put it in
Okay.
gets it. And really the way that we're doing it, so the way that I thought about doing that when we did syllabus is you can edit anything that exists, whether you did it or not, but what you're actually doing is making a copy of the original and then making a modification for yourself. And if more than one person makes the same modification, then we make that available as an alternative and potentially even just swap out entirely that thing happened. So like it could be the case that the professor changes the date of an assignment. And so I make the change, but maybe I change it to the wrong date. And then Evan makes a change, he changes the right date. We probably just leave it alone on their system because that's like them to keeping track of it. But when Justin goes in and he changes it to the same thing that Evan did, then we probably say, okay, this is confirmed. Like this is good. So what we probably want to do is swap in using the new date that you guys have created, but with a reference, a little thing saying, hey, there was a change to this. 2 people said this is correct. Do you want to buy into that, or should we flip it back to what the original was?
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are we ignoring all that?
We're ignoring all that for now, yeah. That's where that starts to get more complicated. We're talking about like creating copies and all kinds of stuff. Right now we're assuming that people always do the right thing, and you can even make it so that anybody can edit it, and once they edit it, it doesn't matter who did it. We don't even know who's authenticated yet. So if whoever edited it, it's it, whoever gets into it, they can just make a change to it and it just becomes a reality. All right.
So for this, would the accounts be like in the back end?
Yep. So this is going to be Rails has a authentication mechanism that's called Devise that already exists. They even have screens and stuff that you could use if you're using a purely Rails app, because we're creating a front end outside of Rails. We have to recreate that front end, but it's relatively straightforward to do. It sets it up. I think so we want to use. You want to use an email address, and what happens then is it sends an email confirming that that's actually you, and then you can confirm the email, and that's what allows you to actually verify the account creation and does the verification stuff for you. It gives you the link and the email automatically to set all that stuff up. So it does some nice things on its own. We use a version of this to do the full measure authentication that we do on our app. Both in the old system, which is kind of crappy the way we do it, but also in the new system, which is much more like how Facebook and Google do it. We are, in the end, we're going to replace, whoever does this story, we're going to replace it with the full measure authentication and the Google authentication and the Facebook authentication, because then you have all 3 of those and it'll be logged into our system so we can actually keep track of people for other reasons, right? That we might want to like push them into using other apps that we have or whatever the case may be. But this is a good thing to learn how to do, because if you're building your own app from scratch, you're going to want to have some idea of how to make this happen. Okay. All right. And then this guy, authentication flow. So here's create an account. Is that it for create an account?
Do not look at too many of this.
There's also the profile page, but we should have an account first. That's just where you go and change information. And then log in. And then last one was upload. All right, and then for this, we generally use, Rails has a gem called carrier wave. Feel free to look at other things, but this is one we usually use. Or you can base 64 encode the PDF and send it up and down that way. Okay, so I'm just going to put that those are the two options. Just those are typical ways of doing it on the Rails side of things. Oops. Is that another check mark there? Oh, it has to have the star. Instead of the iOS camera, it's just going to be the pop down that you'll see when you're opening an image. But all right, so the next thing we do is we throw on these. Remember, we can throw a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 5. More or less represents the number of days that you think it's going to take to complete each of these. And then after they're all thrown on, we'll assign them out. So
like if I throw a 1, does that start today or tomorrow?
So you have it start. I mean, it starts today, but it doesn't really matter. It's so essentially what we'll end up doing for you guys. We'll have an expectation that you'll take somewhere between 3 and 5 points a week. Mm-hmm. The reality is you probably can only complete about 3 points a week. That's because of other meetings and that type of thing. You guys are only working 35 hours, not 40 hours, and that type of thing. But because we're not going to be very good at throwing, especially in the beginning, there's some variability in that. It's also the case that like we might there might be some things that it's okay that it's going to carry over into the next week. It's just one of those types of problems where we have to let it fall over into the next week. We're going to try to do 1 week sprints with you guys and try and keep the story small enough, but sometimes these things are going to carry over to the next week. All right, so it's less about like when it starts and more about like within 2 weeks you should be able to complete somewhere between 6 and 10 points.
Yeah.
All right. And the deliverables are going to be on Monday and then Tuesday. Right? So Monday for the dev team, so you should really largely be done on Monday, but there might be some bugs and stuff that we can clean up. All right, so ability to create courses. We'll say that the person who's going to do this is also going to be the one who sets up the initial Rails app. So why don't we make the person who does this the one who does the initial Rails app, and the one who does the assignments creates the initial syllabi app. These are a little bit easier. You guys have already done these before. All right. So if we're gonna throw, the way we throw is I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, and then you're gonna put fingers up, indicating how many points you think that it's going to be, and then we'll have a conversation about it from there. Ready to throw? 1, 2, 3. 3s, 2s. So now you guys, it's really close. So you can concede if you want to, or if you think that you're right, you can say that you're right. But you guys in the end have to unanimously decide on what you actually want this to be.
For discussion, can we assign it as a group?
We'll do that after. So when we're doing the throw, when you're throwing, it should be based on how long you think it would take an average member of the team to complete this thing, assuming that we could give it to anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
But then when we actually assign it, whoever it is might have particular expertise and might be able to do it faster. That makes sense.
I was in between 2 and 3.
Yes. I was kind of at like 2.4, so I'm also fine with 3.
Well, and this should be a relatively easy one because you guys just did this last week.
But also,
I just think, it depends on the perspective. I think generally, it would be, I would have said 2 if it wasn't for the aspects of like the design in terms of the CSS and making it look like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost to me an extra day.
Okay. Also remember though, you can look at each other's code and copy and paste things.
So from that perspective, then it could be a 2. Actually, if then it could. Since this has already been done, it could be like a 1. Actually, the
Because you remember, but you are starting from scratch. You do still have to set up the Rails app and do the migrations, and there's some copy and paste, but
so 2.
if we're not just like rewriting everything without being able to look at old stuff, then I'm fine with 2.
yeah, you can look at old stuff, but you need to make the tabs work correctly and that type of thing too. So.
Oh, they're also responsible for the tabs.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the other person was making the app.
Just the initial,
But they don't have that in there.
They don't have the tabs because they're on the assignment page.
Yeah. Okay, so then
You only need the one. Like you don't need to do the profile on the other ones, but you do have to make it actually have tabs in it.
Still.
Let's skip that for right now. Let's just say you don't have to do the tabs because I'm gonna componentize the tabs that we created and give that to you guys, and it'll work a lot nicer.
I think every single one of us did the footer differently.
Yeah, we all did it differently.
Are we having the add course thing as a modal? Or like a separate page?
I want to do it as this piece. You want to do it as a modal.
So you can do that. That makes it interesting.
Alright, I'm sticking with 2. Let's say mark through first.
I'm going for 3.
I'm moving to 3.
Alright, 3 it is.
Alright.
Democracy
Because I
wins.
think the modal.
Yeah.
I tried to find documentation on creating a modal without Angular,
I don't know.
and I couldn't.
Yeah, no, I have zero idea how that or DAMS works. So I'm fine with 3.
Yep, I'm gonna give you guys access. This one. Okay, there we go. So here's all our actual production stencil things. I'm just gonna give you guys access to these. What is it, Daniel?
SSE. SSEMA NDA, I think it should be.
With Daniel at the front, right?
No.
No.
What is it?
I don't know, but it's someone else first.
Ashton?
I think mine's just A.
This one?
Yeah.
So I'm not giving you guys full access just so you don't accidentally do something. But if you need more access, let me know. It's fine.
Brings Justin D. Hall. You mean you don't want us to RMRF the product?
I mean, it doesn't, or honestly, it doesn't even matter all that much. There's nothing you could do too horribly. It's all on people's little computers and stuff.
Is
But
that a challenge?
So it's Evan,
yeah,
Evan L. Solomon.
it's more for your own like not
Yeah.
having to worry about it.
Look at a picture.
You were almost a developer.
Almost.
I saw the brief in your click.
Right. Like I mean, we have like Kayla, who's an account manager, is a owner of this project. So it's all right, but that way you guys should be able to like search through those projects and find the modal examples. They're not that hard. There's a little weird syntax, but you'll see it's not that. Okay, so and then back to all right, now the one thing with the reference to this, because they do, I guess, have to be in the project, you can't just put them in the group. You have to, the commit has to be in the stencil project, the front end stencil project, for it to close it, or you can reference it externally, but you'll have to come here. It's a longer thing. It's like, you can look it up, but like if you wanted to close it from the rail side of thing, you have to say closes, and then it's like /summer-intern/2019/group project/front-ends/syllabi/issues/2. It's this thing here. So you have to say I'm closing that. I forget exactly what the syntax is, but it's something like that. All right. So ability to create assignments. So again, you guys did this already. This is the simpler form, so it's not all the assignments together. It's just the regular list of creating an assignment. This person's also going to create the initial stencil app. Ready to throw? You can also ask for more information if there's anything before we throw, but you'll also figure it out after. So 1, 2, 3.
just on the low end of everything.
I could have went 2. I was going to go 2 too. Let's say.
So this does seem to me less complicated than the other one. Creating the stencil app is not. Unless I'm crazy, that's literally just stencil and net or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, making it look like that maybe takes a little while, but like getting the pages up shouldn't take too long.
Yeah, and you don't have a color picker.
Yes.
I mean, maybe
The cards
maybe
are a little
that's- I'm
simpler.
thinking
You don't have to put the
maybe
color thing in.
Maybe I'm a little slow, but maybe it takes me 3. But
I mean,
if
the
I'm going on average,
complexity here that's not on the other
Mm.
one is the
Date.
dates.
that's
Getting-
fair.
I just think
No,
that's-
but there's a
I
date
never did
format.
get that to work. But if that's the one thing that I can't get to work,
No, that could be formatted. There's a date
I mean,
format.
if Daniel does it, it's too. She figured out the dates.
Yeah, but that's not.
If I get-
But you can look at
also-
his code though, right?
Like
Like,
yeah,
you,
use GitHub
Yeah.
and copy and paste it. Then
Yeah.
that's one.
Yeah. all right. Do we want to throw again?
Yeah.
1,
Sure.
2, 3.
Oh.
Did
Two
you
it
do it
is.
too,
Same.
Ashley?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna concede.
Well, it's majority rules.
Unanimous.
Oh.
Because you might know something that they don't know, especially on a team that's this
Let
small.
us know. What's up?
No, we'll go with 2. Yeah, I'll concede. I
Okay.
think 2 is good.
Here's my thought process. I'm trying to vote on the average time.
Yep.
So, me personally, who knows, right?
Well, nobody knows. But yeah, we're
But
guessing.
on average,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm drawing a line here.
What?
Uh,
You're drawing a line? What do you mean? By
between
that?
this half of the desk, this corner of the desk, and the
Yeah.
other.
Oh, no. Okay. I guess.
I mean, you guys are going to be really close, though. I mean, you
Yeah,
guys
I
are
think
finishing
we're-
things. And,
Yeah.
But is it like at the end, when we deliver, close it?
yeah. You fail if you don't do it in the amount of time. No, that's so retrospective. We do in retrospective. We'll be like, okay, we said that this was going to take 2 days. We're a week later now. It's still not done. Why is it not done? But it's not an actual, like, you're not in trouble for that. We just need to talk about what happened so we can better understand a better throw to be able to resolve whatever inefficiencies are there. So this is all guessing, and especially in the beginning, like, you're going to be wildly off more in the beginning. So the first, like, month or 2 of doing this compared to how it's going to be when you get further along.
So when we close it, does that mean that it is integrated with like the courses, that the assignments and the courses are now talking to each other?
They should be, but you shouldn't have to take care of that part. The person who has the course should just just have a link that takes you to the assignments. So you are going to want to use real routing.
Right, but like when we load the assignments view, the courses almost have to be created because we're showing an assignment that's associated with the courses.
You just need a course ID. So technically, the link should be is /assignments ? Course ID equals, and then whatever the ID is, and then your component should get the parameters from the URL and then go and fetch the ones for that course. And when you do a create, it should create one for that course.
Right, but the issue's not closed until it's actually showing, until like the course component, the course
But you don't need
issue
the
is closed and the assignment issue.
But you don't need the course
You don't
component to be able to show yours because you can just
create a
go.
dummy course.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
want to test it for yourself.
Yeah, but you don't even need a dummy course technically. You just need a field for the course ID.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like how do
actually,
you
yeah,
know if it's
because you're not even
working
displaying
if it's
anything in
not,
the
if you're
course.
just looking at like a
No, he's
No,
right
no.
in the sense that if
You don't-
the link just needs the course ID. And
Yeah.
You're not even gonna
There might not
use
even
it.
be a course that has that ID.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you don't need to display anything about it.
Correct.
There.
Correct.
It just needs to, so someone goes there, you're pulling the right courses,
Right.
the right assignments for that course.
See what I'm saying?
yeah, okay.
So you don't need to know anything about courses. Could not exist at all, and you could still display this page, and it's entirely and work correctly.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, sure it does. Sure.
It'll make more sense, I think, as
Sure.
like you start to work on it. But basically, you're going to go to a URL that's /assignments course ID equals 2, right?
Yeah.
And there may or may not be a course that has an ID of 2. It doesn't really matter. You're just looking at assignments where the field course ID is 2.
So these assignment views don't say anything about what course they're for.
They don't. That might be a modification that we want to make, but they technically don't. Right? Like you probably do want to say whatever the course name is, assignments or something at the top, but it doesn't. So.
Are we having it where the user has to fill all those inputs, or they can create one with like leaving something out?
Yeah, so you probably want to do, this isn't in the requirements, like we can go back and add this stuff later, but I would say for validation, you probably want assignment name and due date. The other two might be left off.
Makes sense. Possible points. I mean,
Yeah.
could be anything.
Could be anything. Yeah, that's one that gets a little difficult because it's not always. I mean, it could be percentage points. People do weird things in their syllabus where it's like in total your assignments are worth 500 points, but each one of them is worth 10%. And like you could go and figure that out, but if you're just copying from the syllabus, you're likely to make some mistakes there, right? You put them in as 10 points, they're like 500. What we really want there is total possible points towards your total grade in the course, so that we can do a projection of what your grade is going. Like where we're really trying to go with this is to send you a message as you approach the end of the semester with what you need on your final exam is a whatever to get a B, to get an A, to get a C. Because everybody does that calculation, right? Like, yeah.
It's the only one that anybody cares about.
That's the only one anyone cares about. So we were essentially gonna do that, and so to be able to do that, we needed to know your points, and so we were gonna give people an opportunity to not only put in the points for the assignment, but individually, what did you get on this, so you can record it. That's the point of that. All right. So, what are we putting here? We say 2. All right. All right. Upload syllabus. So again, there's several ways of doing this. I think PDFs you can base 64 encode, which is probably the simplest. Just basically you take the image, it's uploaded, turn it into a base 64 encoded string, and then you just store that in the database in a text field or a blob field. I'm not 100% sure that works with PDFs. If you can't do it that way is not complicated. File uploads, like I talked to you about before, are always a little bit complicated. It uses a different protocol than all the other data. It's not just a JSON hash. It has a file stream of information. You can look, we do some document and image uploading stuff that we turn into base 64 in the stencil projects that we do in production. So you can go look at those for how that happens. But if you have to use the Rails side, if you're using Carrier Wave to do the pieces, there's a decent amount of like reading you're going to have to do on how to actually implement that and set it up. It's not particularly difficult, but it is like in the first time doing something, this is a new thing. All right. So you guys ready to throw?
Wait, so this is just taking a picture, not...
It's not taking a picture. This is a lie. It's just gonna open like the drop down for documents like you normally see.
Okay.
And so you're selecting one and uploading.
Yeah.
Got it.
Lisa, but the third screen does exist.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the second.
It's just the second one doesn't.
And you want to presumably, yeah. So that's like multiple pages of your syllabus. That's page
Yeah.
1, and then you're seeing part of page 2.
Yeah.
You can scroll through.
All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Looks like 3. Is the way.
I was thinking.
Nope.
You go 5?
I would go, yeah, at least a 5. I mean, so part of it is PDFs aren't just like other images. So it's already difficult to do the image uploading. The PDFs aren't necessarily like other images. So when you go to create this preview state, I don't think it's gonna, if I remember correctly when I did this, I don't think it's as simple as like saying image source equals the PDF and then you can just like scroll through them. You either need a PDF previewer to present that information inside of the app, which some of those might exist. I did this 2 years ago. There might be all kinds of cool things that help that to happen a lot easier now. But the other option I think was I had to, using Carrier Wave, split the PDF into each page and then save each page as an image and then loop over the pages that I created to create the preview like that. See what I'm saying? So point is a little more
Strong 5.
yeah, strong 5. Yeah.
I will concede that.
Yeah. I'll put a due date on it.
Here's my hope is that I'm wildly wrong about every single one of these throws, and then that way I get to learn from it on Monday. When we have an embarrassingly small amount
Of things.
work
Yeah.
done. Or alternatively, we all finished tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we sat around for the week because we had nothing else.
Oh no, we'll get more. Yeah, I mean this one we're doing the things that I think this is going to keep you guys busy for the week, but certainly if it doesn't, there's lots of things. So once pieces get done, you could easily go and create, and you guys are totally in charge of this, right? So you can create a new issue and throw on it. You need at least 2 people when you throw. Ideally, you have 3, but you can create new issues for like doing the full assignment view where you take all the assignments and put them together and give that to somebody. You could potentially think about somebody maybe is going to create like the administrative portal to use for MTurk where people can view the syllabus and put in the information. Somebody could look at how to actually add capacitor and start to deploy this as an app. Like there's lots of places that we can go from here. Okay. Alternatively, if any of those things are too complicated, we can also start on the next project already, which would be very similar to what we're doing here. It would just have a different looking UI. And so somebody could start on that. So there's lots of ways that we can go. And if you start to run out of work, just come talk to me and we'll figure it out.
I don't think that would be an issue.
I don't either, but I mean, like, there's, there's a 3 and a 2 thrown. Yeah, no, it's exactly right.
We're all secretly really good. We've just been hiding it.
Yeah.
From both ourselves and each other.
Yeah, no, you guys are doing great. Definitely don't get down on yourselves. You really are. All right, create an account. So you're going to have to set up devise on the back end and then interact with the APIs to do the actual creation. I think email and stuff just works when you set all that stuff up. But
Wait, let me see this.
yeah, sorry, I was trying to look to see what I have. Good. You don't need to do this left, right nonsense. We'll just make it that when you come in, this is the screen that you start on. And then you can either choose to create an account or log in using email. Don't worry about the login using Facebook. Log in Facebook?
Monster wants to use Facebook more for your information.
Oh, lots of people, man. It's just because it's simple. It's the same reason like a lot of people when they go to GitLab, they use their GitHub account because it's just because you don't have to put in their username and password.
I'm ready.
Ready, huh? All right, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
I almost went 8 though.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because,
I-
doing the screens also is like, that's work.
Screens should be simple. So the screen should be.
In terms of like designing, like I need this to be here, especially if you haven't done it before. At least
Yeah.
for me, I always feel like the CSS takes time.
Yeah, so they're actually, I don't think you should have any CSS on these pages.
Okay.
I think you want to put a color on the content, which is going to do your background stuff. You're going to put a color secondary on each of the items, which is why they turn yellow like that. This is just a list, right, with items, and then the button is also in that list, and then there's another list that has down here. When we get to this one, you might be doing some ion grid stuff, and if you look at how to use that correctly, there's attributes that'll say, like, I want to center all of these things and space them out as a column. Okay, so they're using the flex system in the background, and then the same thing here. It's just a list and the buttons. And again, you can use the ion grid if you want to like actually push it into a position. But I don't think you're actually going to need to do any CSS.
Wait, can you go up? Wait, so which one do you see first? You see the second one first?
Yeah, you see the second one first. Yeah, I can change.
And then,
And then it just depends on what you click on.
where's the I already have an account thing? The actual button.
Log in using email. You can just make it say log in. Create an account. Log in. Cool.
Yep.
All right. So now that they all have points on them, who wants to do what? And this is how we normally do this. We don't
That's
say
nice. There's a 3 and a 2, and then there's 3, 2, 5.
2 files. So somebody should have nothing to do this week. No. So, but this is how we normally do this. Like we let whoever on the team, whoever wants to do it, you have dibs, right? So you just, if you want it, you say quick enough, and you go for it. It's part of it is building those transactive memory systems, though, and knowing like, oh, that person could accomplish it faster, or maybe I really want to develop my skills in that area. I don't know much about it, so I know it's going to take me longer, but I want to do it. Right? So but it's up to you guys who wants what.
We can just call out right now.
Yep.
I personally would be interested in creating an account and logging in.
So we're
I've never done it, and I won't be finished on Monday, but
Yeah, that's fine.
I would be.
The syllabus.
You're gonna do the syllabus upload.
I mean, and then I don't know if somebody who has the 2 or the 3 finishes. I'm fine, like pair programming for the whatever I
Yeah.
don't have done yet.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to. You guys have been doing a good job of talking to each other and getting help, so you're gonna have to continue doing that.
I can do the classes then.
In the courses.
Let's take the mysterious assignments. One that you guys all seem to say is 2 days or whatever.
We'll see.
I mean, I've got like a 10-dayer at my pace here. So
You said it was a 5.
yeah, I did. Well, I'm going on averages, man. You got to throw out the outliers. It's not statistically significant. So does that mean that? So you're doing the courses. So you're doing the back end. So does that mean that I have to like say like, hey,
No, she's
throw
doing the
throw
courses.
devise? Yeah. So she's doing the back end, right? So do I have to say like, hey, Ashlyn, make sure you include devise in the gem file?
No, you need to do
No,
it.
she'll
She's
create
just
it,
gonna-
and then you get in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should just quickly create a new Rails app called Syllabi, push it up to that project repo, and then you can pull it down. It should only take a few minutes for it.
Yeah.
Same
All
thing
right.
with the stencil app. Just
Okay.
create it, call it Syllabi, push it up.
So like if there's ever, like when you're starting a project, like if Daniel needs to use Carrier Wave or whatever the gem is, he just waits
Yeah.
until the back end does it. Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
This is-
Yeah, they're not responsible for the back end. They're just
Yeah.
creating the initial.
From now on, if I need a gem, I'm gonna just,
Yeah,
I'm
or a
gonna send you
migration
Slack.
or any Rails code that's on you
Yeah.
in addition to your normal stuff.
For sure.
Did I put on some course?
Oh, so then I do what I make the table for
You wouldn't
Like
need
users.
to because Devise does that automatically.
okay.
But yes, you would.
Yeah.
But you would.
So no fancy has many through.
Nope, it'll already be set up for
What
it.
a bummer. Okay. Well, then I'm gonna go read about what devices.
Yep.
Okay, so there is a group project
Also, is there multiple syllabi that can be uploaded?
No.
Not per class.
Okay, so then what's the number? There's a number.
Good sake.
There shouldn't be one.
There shouldn't be one. It should
Uh,
just be like a tag, like we already have one.
There should
the
be a
screen?
plus button.
yeah, I know what you're
For
talking about.
courses.
I feel like we were using that as a how many people have uploaded this syllabus, the same one as a like you can.
Validator.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to put it for now, but we might go back to some concept of that.
If there's one.
If there's one, well, so you probably want to check if there's one that's been verified. You probably want like a open, like a pending state or something if it hasn't been yet. Like a pie chart.
Leave that to you, Ashley. I'm just
Yeah,
worried about
that's not my problem.
I'll do
Yeah, that's
whatever.
not
Oh, great! You guys are already working like a team. It's not my problem. All right. Yeah, one thing that is going to happen. Oh, we talked a little bit about this stuff before, but working on a team is hard. It's always hard. It's particularly hard when you're a developer, I think, because I think most people look at development as engineering, and that is largely true. And that's how we've approached this from the beginning, which is there's a problem, you need to solve it. How you solve it doesn't matter. You just need to solve it. And that is the most important thing. And that's what engineering is. There's a problem, it's been specified, you need to solve the problem. Okay. But development is also an art. And there's two ways that it's an art, but the primary one that you're going to get mad at each other about is the way that you implement the solution. How you write the code, what libraries you use, how many spaces you have, how many lines of code it takes you to solve the problem, how you thought about the complexity, how generalizable it is, how generalizable it isn't, all of those things. Okay, so that art piece is where you're going to fight. The engineering piece you're not going to fight about. You all know that you have a solution that you're trying to get to. You all want to get there. But the way in which you go to implement that solution is where you're going to fight. And it's okay, but there's a couple things to remember. One is, in the end, for the purpose of the company and the larger goal, what you're trying to do is solve the problem. You're an engineer. You're not an artist. Okay. Art's important. It's useful, especially because it can help improve like everybody's coding abilities, and you can learn from one another, and you can bring stuff along. But check your ego in that. Is it solving the problem? If it is, it's good enough. Now we can talk about ways that we could potentially improve it, but we don't necessarily have to make those changes. Okay, so when you approach the conversation, it should be one of, hey, you could potentially look at it this way or approach it this way, and maybe that would be more generalizable, or maybe that would be easier to read, or I would understand it better, or whatever the case may be. But if it solves the problem, it solves the problem. Okay, so like the biggest issue is taken care of. What you're talking about now is semantics or preferences or potentially improvements, and those things are all good, and you should have those conversations. But recognize that they're secondary issues. Okay, don't make that your primary issue, or you're going to fight and you're going to waste a bunch of time trying to get your way to be the right one, and it just doesn't matter because it's solved. Does that make sense? So check your egos is what it comes down to. And you don't have much of egos yet, but it's going to come, and so just making you aware of it.
Yeah, you guys just
All right, Daniel.
It's coming.
So what you're saying is we need to nag each other all week.
Yes, nag each other as much as possible.
Yeah, so that our egos are